Hey guys, so I am now at the, let's see, what is this? One, two, three, fourth part of the Rise of China series by Epic History. 10 years ago, when I was a sophomore in high school, is when I first that's when we started learning about like the Cold War area, basically post World War two and kind of the rise of communism. And while there was a heavy emphasis on the USSR and America's rivalry with the Soviets, but there was a brief period there where we were kind of talking about, China, or at least kind of skimmed through it, and the rise of Mao Zedong and whatnot. And I remember kind of looking up like the kill counts of like certain leaders. You have Hitler, Stalin, and like Mao Zedong. And I remember that some of the charts I was looking at had Mao Zedong's um the death toll under his regime or reign to be higher than the other two, which really shocked me. Let me see if I can pull up something. Yeah, it was this exact chart 10 years ago that I found when I was kind of looking up. Um again, like I was a teenager then and I took a lot of things, more at face value than I do now, but there, this is still quite a something to look at, right? Like kind of like, oh. um and I remember just kind of like writing off Mao at that point, very much like, oh, he's like worse than like, the other guys. He's as bad as Hitler and Stalin, I think, is what I had said. And I remember I was talking with my friends because we would talk about history, and I was like, dude, this Mao guy is as like bad as like Hitler and Stalin. I was just kind of like saying stuff like that willy nilly. And the thing is, I was talking to my two friends R and Jay. I'm not gonna say their names. Jay was a Chinese um woman and whatnot. And I remember that when this discourse started happening, and I was kind of like, oh, look at how many he's killed. Dude's killed perhaps more than like Hitler and Stalin. Like, you know what I mean? I was kind of like talking about that, and I remember Jay got quiet. She got quiet, and then R was like, hey man, like in China, like Mao is kind of still, he's they have a much more positive view than what I was spewing at the time. And I remember thinking, oh, kind of like the situation was a bit weird. And I remember like, oh, I'm sorry, to Jay. And she's like, oh, it's okay. But like, I think that's all this to say is that that's like um my earliest introduction to seeing that there is this interesting discourse with, Mao Zedong. And it's that I was looking up before this video, because again, that was 10 years ago. And after that, I never looked into it like modern China Mao Zedong ever again until now. 10 years later. And like I said, I was like, I was looking up, and like, you know people's like opinions on Mao Zedong, trying to get more discourses I like to do off screen, and like history forums. And I think some of the more positive opinions is that like, yeah, but you have to see what China went through, which we just did throughout this series, and how much of a mess. And like Mao's um reign, though there was things like we're about to get into, like the Great Leap Forward, that did not go smoothly, to put it nicely. A lot of people, I think one of the most interesting parallels that I remember reading is that like, he's kind of comparable, or at least how um much of the popular view that some Chinese people have, or at least a lot, I think, is that he's comparable to like, he's to like the Chinese what George Washington is to the to America. and that, you know, before Mao things were much worse, as we covered the chaotic events now leading to Mao, and then, you know, by comparison, there was a lot um better things. And so like that's some of the stuff I was reading, trying to really understand, because I'm like, okay, that was 10 years ago where I seemed to jump immediately into the idea that, oh, you know, right up there with Hitler and Stalin. I guess if you look at the kill counts and if they're comparable, yeah, but then I realized that the discourse around Mao is so interesting, because like while many would jump to like instantly talking about how awful Hitler is, and even Stalin, Mao's name kind of gets left out a lot more of the three, you know? And I very rarely hear discourse about him. And so, like I said, remembering how negative I was 10 years ago, and now looking at this and reading and trying to understand more about why, you know, there's definitely popular opinions, or like why there's a lot of Chinese people who still really revere him. I've come into this also to say that I'm not the same as I was 10 years ago. I'm trying to now understand, and I'm kind of, like I said, looking at some of the things, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I could understand now why. And so point is, I've come now with a new open mind, and a more understanding mind than an overwhelmingly, I guess, negative. Um, and I believe that epic history is going to give the most unbiased, most objective view of his reign. I don't expect him to be negative or criticize. I don't expect him to be overwhelmingly positive. I imagine he's just going to present the facts, and and you know, we'll see what comes of it. Like I said, as of right now, I'm not the same as I was 10 years ago, where I would have probably came into this, like, been like, oh yeah, Mao's like, this guy's evil, like, you know, I mean, we'll see what my opinions are, but right now, like I said, it's been 10 years since I looked at anything related to Mao Zedong. I've come in with a new, trying to understand, because there is a lot of people who still revere him, at least in China, and, you know, there is discourse, and especially, like I said, the comparisons of look at what China was before he took over and how chaotic it was. By comparison, much more, in many ways stable, and or how he left like China after. This is all to say that, like I said, back then, teenage me, overwhelmingly negative by what little bits I got from high school and whatnot, and more willing to take things at face value. Modern current me, now after 10 years of not touching this subject or looking into it, and now coming back in with a more bigger understanding that things might be a bit more interesting. Point is, I'm coming into this with a more open mind and a more wanting to understand mind as to Mao Zedong. I want these facts. I think epic history. I trust him to give them to me objectively, and then I will form my own opinion. Oh, I'm also going to be doing more research after this video, of course, but you know what I mean. Point is, I'm not coming into this overwhelmingly negative or positive, just more wanting to understand, which I think is probably the best way to approach history. And I do try to come into this, but sometimes, like, yeah, sometimes I'll come into a topic with, you know, already made up opinions and minds, but this one's definitely going to be a blank slate for me. And I'm interested in knowing what some of you think about Mao Zedong. Do you agree with what I used to think when I was a teenager? Like, maybe you were like, yo, Edwin, you were right when you were a teenager. Yeah, Mao's a tyrant and whatnot. Or maybe you might have a different opinion compared to past me. Like I said, I don't have an opinion at the moment. I'm just kind of wanting to understand. I'll probably form my opinion after this video and with my own personal research. And then maybe next video I'll probably touch more on it. But for now, I'm just going into this wanting to learn. So let's get to it. But first, if you want to watch the original video by Epic History, the link is down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my content and you want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider becoming a member. It would really help me out a lot. Now with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let us watch The Rise of China, The Great Leap Forward. The east is red and the sun rises. In China, there emerges Mao Zedong.
China, 1949. From Peking's Tiananmen Square, Communist leader Mao Zedong has proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China. A new age for China, for the Chinese Communist Party, and for Chairman Mao. He has devoted his life to revolution and to his dream of transforming China. Now is his moment. Mao's government calls itself a people's democratic dictatorship, but democracy is not on the agenda. Instead, the heart of government is the Central Committee of around 100 senior party members. Above that, the 12-strong Politburo. And within that, the Politburo's Standing Committee, where true power lies. There are 5 members, including Liu Shaoqi, a veteran labor organizer who studied in Moscow. He is now vice chairman of the Communist Party. Zhou Enlai, a hero of the revolution, once Mao's superior within the party, but who has now publicly and privately committed to Mao's leadership. Charming and polite, he has shown a great talent for diplomacy and will serve as Communist China's first state premier and foreign minister. And Mao himself, chairman of the Chinese Communist Party and paramount leader. Aged 55, Mao now wields unchallenged personal authority, the result of his inspiring leadership in the struggle against the Japanese and nationalists. Though never a natural orator, Mao is a charismatic figure, capable of deep intellectual thought, shrewd political tactics, and stirring writing. Since 1938, he has been married to his 4th wife, the famous actress Jiang Qing. She is a powerful personality in her own right, ferociously loyal to Mao, and scathing of his rivals, real or imagined. After years of revolution, invasion, and civil war, China is impoverished and in desperate need of reform and rebuilding. The Communist Party gets to work immediately to impose a vision on the country that is heavily inspired by Soviet thinking. To this end, around 10,000 Soviet advisors arrive in China to assist in reconstruction. The country remains an overwhelmingly agrarian society. In 1949, by rough estimate, every 5th person on Earth is a Chinese peasant.
Wow.
They have long provided the base for communist success in China, wooed by the promise of land redistribution, which has been enforced in communist-controlled areas since the early 1930s. Now it is to be rolled out on a national scale. Rural landowners, who have dominated the Chinese countryside for centuries, are vilified for abusing their power over peasants. They are publicly humiliated by the communists. put on trial, and executed in huge numbers.
Holy crap.
More than 1 million are killed. Their land is seized and redistributed. Over the next 3 years, about 300 million peasants receive land for the first time. Early reforms are intended to fundamentally reshape Chinese society. New laws improve the rights of women and protect their role in the workforce. To improve literacy rates of just 20%, the government promotes the use of simplified Chinese characters. Huge propaganda drives in theatres, public storytelling and posters aim to both educate and indoctrinate in communist revolutionary values. Suspected counter-revolutionaries, such as nationalist sympathizers, corrupt officials and capitalists, are to be reported and eliminated. The campaigns upend China's traditional class structure, humiliating and impoverishing bourgeois and middle-class families. The number of victims is impossible to quantify, but hundreds of thousands suffer loss of status, confiscation of property, or imprisonment. Some are even forced to take their own lives.
The atom bomb is a paper tiger which the US reactionaries use to scare people.
China's new communist leaders seek to build alliances abroad, but World War II has been followed by the Cold War, and the world is now divided between a democratic, capitalist West and the Soviet-led communist bloc. The Western powers offer no support to communist China. In fact, they continue to recognize their wartime ally, Chiang Kai-shek, as China's legitimate ruler. His authoritarian nationalist government, officially known as the Republic of China, still holds Taiwan and small islands in the Taiwan Strait. Inevitably, it is to the Soviet Union that Mao turns. In December 1949, he travels to Moscow for 3 months of talks with Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin. Their relationship is not an easy one. In imposing his own brand of communism in China, Mao has often overruled his Soviet-backed rivals. Nevertheless, in February 1950, the two leaders sign a treaty of friendship, alliance and mutual assistance, unlocking economic and military cooperation between China and the Soviet Union. By the 18th century, the Qing dynasty had added several remote western territories to its empire: Mongolia, Xinjiang, and Tibet. But in the tumult following the 1911 revolution, they had escaped Chinese control. Now the communist government acts to reimpose central authority. In 1949, the People's Liberation Army is sent to reoccupy Xinjiang. In 1951, Tibet is occupied and annexed, following a short conflict the Chinese government euphemistically calls the peaceful liberation of Tibet. As part of the settlement, the Dalai Lama is allowed to remain at the head of a local government. No attempt is made to regain Outer Mongolia, which is now within the Soviet sphere of influence. Taiwan remains a major source of contention, Both the communists and Chiang's nationalists continue to denounce the other side as bandits and their governments as illegitimate. Elsewhere, China's borders seem settled. But in 1950, the People's Republic of China faces a major conflict on its doorstep: the Korean War. After World War II, Korea had been divided into two
Yeah, this is one of the other topics that I remember learning about. We actually watched a movie, a Korean movie about the Korean War. Wait. Yeah, that's the movie we watched. It's called The Brotherhood of War. It's from 2004, or at least I think that's the English translation. I'm not gonna try to pronounce the foreign or rather the official title that is in Korean. But yeah, I remember we watched that, and this was a really interesting war that had like long-lasting consequences. It is so interesting to see how these two ideologies with communism and capitalism just took over the world. The 20th century, the more I look at it, it's just insane what happened. But like, yeah, eastward is where communism like more settled, and then westward is where capitalism settled as well. And it just the proxy wars, right? Because everyone's like, yeah, if the US and the USSR pull out the atom bombs and just go in a full-on war, the world, most people have always just said, like, yeah, the world would have been done. We would have all died if it happened. So instead, just this endless chess game of proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam is really a very interesting aspect of the Cold War. And yeah, the Korean War was a really fun topic to learn about back, 10 years ago. Like I said, a lot of these topics 10 years ago, like I keep thinking about, like, dang, I haven't touched on this since I was like a teenager, So like obviously my thoughts and opinions that I once had then no longer exist because I realized, there's only so much a classroom like that's like what 20 to 30 minutes can tell you, like. So not touching on the topic on my own personal time, I feel like I'm coming into this completely new again, and just with a more desire to try to understand and hopefully grasp nuances that I didn't back then, especially like I say, like with Mao and just everything. That's why I'm being more quiet, because like I said, I don't really have an overwhelming opinion or feeling at the moment, just a real desire to try to learn and understand all sides to this, like, those who still revere Mao and those who don't. So again, I'll see what my opinion is when this is all said and done, and if I form one right away.
Separate states, a communist north and democratic south. In June 1950, Northern forces invade the south, advancing rapidly and capturing Seoul within a week. Korea becomes a Cold War battleground. Under US leadership, UN troops intervene in support of South Korea. By the end of the year, they have pushed the front line back to the Yalu River, close to the North Korean-Chinese border.
Yeah, and this is where China, I think, gets in, like, it's when they're moving so close, I think this is where China gets involved to help push back.
Fearing a US-led invasion and hoping to shore up a communist ally, Mao sends in Chinese troops to support.
I still remember that scene vividly from the movie. Like, it's around this time, it's just these endless wave of hordes of Chinese soldiers rushing to help push back the advancing UN forces and whatnot. So yeah.
North Korea. more than 1 million Chinese troops enter the battle, soon rising to 2.5 million. In the face of this onslaught, UN forces retreat south. After months of heavy fighting, the war enters a stalemate. Both sides dig in along the 38th parallel. In 1953, an armistice is agreed, and this becomes the heavily fortified...
You know, interesting thing I remember learning about, it was that Douglas MacArthur, famous for his exploits in World War II in the Pacific front, and, you know, his occupation of Japan, you know, got involved in the Korean War. And, you know, he's a pretty famous figure and pretty high name even among World War II standards, at least here in America. And he was involved in this. And then, like, the very, you know, popular way to look at it is that he basically said, let's nuke China. He's like, let's bring in the nukes, let's use the bombs, and that was a factor. Though his dismissal is a bit more complex. Like, that's kind of that's how we kind of just go to it. Yeah, he wanted to use the nukes immediately and get China to contain China, and ultimately they, you know, America didn't use the bombs, but though there was more like his, at times, criticism, and you know, there's a lot more to his dismissal. But yeah, that is a factor that people will be quick to bring up. He wanted to straight up bring in the nukes and just started. Again, I have to say, there is a good amount of restraint in the Cold War with the nukes. Again, America, fresh off World War II, we have this bomb. We're like one of the only few to have this. I don't know if the Soviets at this point have figured it out, but point is, you know, we're still one of the few, if not the only, and we use them to end, to you know, subdue Japan. So I have to say, I'm a bit happy that at least everyone had enough brain cells to know, maybe if we get too much of the bombs involved, we're all going to die, so we should probably be incredibly reserved. I am kind of happy with that, because yeah, not everyone was as trigger happy with the bombs, and we're all better off for it, you know? Because, like, at least everyone had enough self-preservation to realize, yeah, this could be really dangerous, and we all just whip out and start using them willy-nilly, you know? So I always remember that from Douglas MacArthur, and his suggestion to straight up start using the bombs on China.
Border between North and South Korea, known as the DMZ.
Yeah, I remember looking at, like, documentaries about North Korea. Dude, North Korea is like the real-life 1984. For those of you who have not read 1984, you really should. It's a really haunting, but I think important novel to read. I read it, like, around high school. I think it was my senior year. And, you know, I remember, like, oh, this is kind of terrifying. To this day, it's still the most terrifying book, and you often hear it brought up with governments, especially when people don't like the government. 1984, but I think, like, North Korea, it's probably the closest to 1984, at least in, like, modern real times. Because, like, yeah, have you seen, like, I've seen, like, documentaries about, like, how, you know, suppressed a lot of people are in there, and then you hear, like, the testimonies of, like, people who survived North Korean camps. I'm just like, holy crap, like, it is, like, whoa, you know what I mean? It really does kind of scare me. And I've often just thought, like, dude, this is like 1984 in real life. Like, this is Orwellian, is the term you use, with, like, dystopian, oppressive regimes and governments and whatnot. Yeah.
Demilitarized zone. For China and for Mao, the Korean War is presented as a triumph. They have championed the global socialist cause and stood up to the US superpower. Perhaps even more importantly, communist legitimacy within China is greatly bolstered. But it comes at a huge cost. The Korean War claims an estimated 3 million lives. Chinese military casualties are more than 500,000, possibly many more.
Again, just crazy, dude. The kill counts were like, every video it's like, yeah, 3 million, 2 million parrot. I'm just like, what the? It's like just the land reforms we just covered a few minutes ago. With the, we just covered with just taking the landowners, 1 million dead there. I'm like, where? This manpower is insane. Just the 20th century manpower, just like in war, definitely went up like another tier. But like, I'm just like in China, I'm just like, oh my goodness, guys, just like so much death. Like, holy crap, it's like, it's just so insane, just so many people, it just keeps escalating too. It just keeps, every video like another 2 million have perished, another just, oh my goodness, dude.
They include Mao's own son, Mao An-ing, killed in a UN airstrike while serving with Chinese forces.
Oh, wow.
In its efforts to curb the spread of communism, the US has now imposed a total trade embargo on communist China.
Trade war.
The war has also strengthened US support for Chiang Kai-shek's government in Taiwan, with President Truman sending the US 7th Fleet to deter a potential communist attack.
Yeah, when we were covering History Matters, a video about why didn't China just invade, or like why, no, the video specifically is why didn't Mao invade Taiwan. That was one of the factors I remember we covered. One of the factors we covered, the intervention and aid from the US helping Taiwan. Let 100 flowers bloom. The 5-year plan.
In 1953, China's government introduces its first 5-year plan, inspired by similar economic programs in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, like Stalin. I was just thinking exactly like Stalin's.
One aim is to swiftly and massively increase Chinese industrial output. Huge efforts, backed by Soviet technical expertise, produce remarkable results in transport, industry, and infrastructure. Production of coal, iron, and steel all exceed their ambitious targets. While China becomes a major oil producer for the first time. The second aim of the 5-year plan is to rapidly boost agricultural output. To this end, the Communist Party pushes farmers to collectivize on a massive scale, forming cooperatives that include dozens, sometimes hundreds of households. By 1956, 80% of peasant households belong to a cooperative, meaning they share the land, tools, and harvest.
I remember this too. Just like this being a part of the learning. Like, I'm trying. A lot of this is starting to come back to me, and just the idea that like yeah, kind of everything is being shared, and that everyone's kind of living like this. I don't know. I don't remember it all going well though. Like that's kind of what's coming into my mind. Like yeah, lots of people die from some of these policies, if I remember correctly, right? Like there's actually indirectly a lot of death that comes from this. If I'm remembering correctly, I guess I'm about to find out, but that some of these policies did not have the how do you say, positive view that they probably should have had, or at least that Mao wanted.
Cooperatives also have an ideological aim: to tighten party control over the lives and thoughts of rural communities. At breakneck speed, communist reforms are overturning a rural way of life that's centuries old, and sowing the seeds of disaster. Mao is encouraged by the apparent success of the first 5-year plan. Hoping to encourage further innovation, in 1956 he announces, "Let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend." It is an invitation for others to come forward with constructive proposals for the government. In response, criticism of the party comes flooding in, from intellectuals, academics and scientists.
I don't know, it sounds kind of counter-revolutionary to me. They might need to go now, huh? Is that where we're going with this?
Mao and the leadership are dismayed and angered. Rather than welcome proposals, they move to crush what they now regard as dangerous dissent. A new anti-rightist campaign punishes at least 500,000 men and women who are considered insufficiently loyal to the party. Penalties include public humiliation, hard labor, and execution. Among the leaders of this brutal campaign, a new addition to the Politburo Standing Committee, the 52-year-old Deng Xiaoping.
Oh wow.
A veteran of the Long March, he will become a crucial figure in the years ahead.
The thoughts of the chairman are always correct. If we encounter any problem, any difficulty, it is because we have not followed the instructions of the chairman closely enough. Oh boy. Oh no. Yeah, here we go.
1958. The start of a second 5-year plan. This time, even more ambitious. Mao calls it the Great Leap Forward, a huge program to create a truly socialist state and dramatically expand industrial output to catch up with the world's leading economies. A huge public information campaign spreads the message throughout the country, urging every Chinese citizen to rise to the challenge and embrace Mao's leadership. Existing rural cooperatives are merged into vast people's communes, in which the party controls every aspect of daily life. The state now owns the land, buys harvests, and distributes rations. Private kitchens are banned as representing selfish individualism and replaced by communal canteens. Very quickly, the Great Leap Forward's ambitions become detached from reality. Many of the technicians and experts who should have overseen the campaign have been purged.
Oh boy.
Under intense pressure to meet unrealistic targets, local party officials exaggerate harvest figures. These inflated reports suggest large surpluses of grain, which is then taken from the communes to supply the cities. In reality, this means far too much grain is taken from the communes.
Oh my gosh.
Often leaving them without enough to feed themselves.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember when we were talking about the communes. Something like, yeah, just imagine just living with a bunch of people, not really owning anything, and, you know, like the lack of privacy, and yeah, to me it sounds like, oh gosh, heck no, I don't want that. Though it is interesting to kind of relearn this, because it definitely, like, I had thought like 10 years ago, it was more to capture the communist idea that everyone's equal, or at least I think that's how it was proposed. Again, a lot of this information, I'm going on from like information from topics I learned 10 years ago. So again, like, you're gonna have to forgive me for my bad recollection at times, and, you know, the vagueness of my comments, but something like, I had thought it was kind of to like capture the communist idea, everyone's equal, no property, you know, just you know, we're all in this together, like this certain lack of individualism and more of the people, and everyone's equal, no one can rise above another. I thought that was always kind of like a part of the commune. At least that's what I had thought like 10 years ago, which maybe it could be, but yeah, just seeing, it's interesting seeing the political side of it, more like, okay, to control people, and it is their idea of thinking, okay, maybe this will work in order to produce our goals, and putting all these people together, not only do we control them, but maybe we can maximize, the output that we need to put. You know, and I guess, but again, it's kind of backfiring. But good to see what pragmatic idea that, or at least what they thought would be pragmatic. See how that all came about, you know.
Drought, mismanagement, and corruption actually mean agricultural production is in steep decline.
Oh my gosh.
Millions of peasants now face starvation. On top of this, farmers face new nonsensical demands, like an order to use homemade foundries to produce iron, often of such poor quality it's unusable. The result is a disastrous famine across China. By some recent estimates, Mao's Great Leap Forward is responsible for at least 45 million excess deaths, around 7% of the population.
Holy crap, dude. The manpower is insane. I need to pause the video, I need to think. I'm telling you guys, add up all the deaths that we have covered in this video, from like the Qing all the way to now. Just the millions that have died in almost like one lifetime or so. Yeah, I remember when we covered the Great Leap Forward, kind of covering that, yeah, it had a really negative, it did not live up to the expectation. It wasn't what they thought it would, it didn't go the way they thought it would go, you know? Yeah, that's to put it nicely. Holy crap. These policies though, man, like, just so... I'm sorry, I'm like at a loss for words at the moment. Like, this is like one of those things that's just like, I just don't know how to like talk about it. I'm just like shocked. Like, at a loss for words. The more the series goes on, the more just at a loss for words, I find myself. Because I'm just like, oh my goodness, holy fudge. You know, holy fudge, dude.
It ranks as one of the greatest man-made disasters in history. In the most hard-pressed areas, whole communes starved to death. Famine had always been a feature of life and death in China. But the winter of 1960 is perhaps the darkest hour in the country's history.
I want to talk a little bit.
Reports of widespread chaos and suffering eventually seep through to the upper echelons of the party. In the summer of 1959, at a conference in Lushan, Minister of Defense Peng Dehuai openly denounces the Great Leap Forward and Mao's leadership. Mao is not in listening mood. Peng is placed under house arrest and removed from office. His replacement, General Lin Biao, is one of Mao's most loyal supporters. But as the months go by, the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. When news of the famine reaches Taiwan, Chiang Kai-shek seeks to humiliate Mao by ordering airdrops of food to the mainland.
Wow. That's kind of a power move, though. Just like, that's kind of a power move. Holy crap. Wow, I kind of like that. That's hilarious. But, yeah, Mao, you gotta address this, dude. We can't ignore the millions. The 45 million. Is that the conservative estimate, or is that, like, the worst case scenario? Because I know with scenarios like these, there's always the conservative, like, oh, you know, this is this, and then there's the extreme one. I'm wondering if that's the extreme one, or the conservative, or there's potentially more, which would break my mind if I found out there was potentially even more than that. How do you have a population? I'm sorry, I can't get over all the death I've witnessed in this series. I'm just like, where are all these people coming from? Oh my gosh. I know China's always had a great population. It's famous for having a big population, but just seeing it, like, in this scale is just like, wow. Like, it's kind of like, I'm awestruck, you know? I'm sorry, I'm like out of it right now, bro.
By 1961, the party has to acknowledge reality. Mao Zedong publicly accepts that mistakes were made. He remains chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, but for the next few years, he steps back from frontline politics. In his place, more pragmatic leaders, notably Liu Shaoqi, Zhou Enlai, and Deng Xiaoping, take on the day-to-day business of government. Some of the policies that had led to the famine are abandoned. Communes are reduced in size, communal canteens are abandoned, and some land returns to private ownership. But the party still controls all aspects of daily life, providing everything from healthcare to housing, education, and employment, while food remains rationed.
Oh boy.
The work unit, not the family, is the basic unit of social and economic existence. Meanwhile, in 1958, the government adopts a new phonetic alphabet to encourage literacy in China. It is called Pinyin. and becomes the new system for the Romanization of Chinese names. Peking becomes Beijing.
Oh.
Canton becomes Guangzhou. Nanking becomes Nanjing, with countless more changes. Pinyin spreads only slowly across China itself, and it is not until the 1980s that the new names are taken up abroad.
Yeah. People all over the world are now discussing whether a third world war will break out. Oh, we still are, Mao. We still are. It's every time you hear about it, World War III, here we're coming. If the imperialists insist on unleashing another war, we should not be afraid of it.
While enacting the Great Leap Forward at home, Mao takes an increasingly aggressive approach abroad. In August 1958, the Chinese army starts shelling islands in the Taiwan Strait, belonging to the Republic of China, testing nationalist defenses. The US response is emphatic, sending naval and air reinforcements to the region, and deciding to use nuclear weapons if necessary.
Oh my gosh.
It is one of the world's first serious nuclear crises. The situation eventually reverts to a hostile standoff. But Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, who is pursuing a policy of peaceful coexistence with the West, is furious at Mao's recklessness. Relations between China and the Soviet Union, the world's two great communist states, are in steep decline.
That's another aspect that I always found interesting, because you think, like, on paper, China and Russia would be, like, the ultimate dream team. They're both communists, therefore they should just get along and, like, see eye to eye. But it's way more complicated than that, which I always found interesting. Even back then, I think, learning about this, I was like, oh, really? That's a very interesting thing. You'd think they would be, like, birds of a feather flock together kind of way. But, like, especially watching this video now, seeing that there is kind of, like, a weird, I'm not sure if tension's the right word, but there is a difference. Even when he mentioned earlier, like, Mao's brand of communism. Overall, yeah, did they make the treaty and aid each other? Sure, but it always kind of does feel like there's a weird, like, okay, you know, there's a difference, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at, between the two. And seeing this, like, they're not always on the same page, despite what you would think, right? I don't know. I find that's a very interesting dynamic of the situation. I think there comes a point where they just kind of, like, cut off. I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm going off by very dated logic many years ago, but isn't there a point where the two kind of stop fully cooperating? I think. I could be wrong, but I think that maybe that might come. We'll see. The point is definitely the weird differences that I find interesting.
In 1956, Khrushchev had denounced the excesses of Stalinism and the cult of personality.
Yeah, there's the idea of de-Stalinization, right? I think it's the term that I've heard used and that we learned about. It's like, yeah, maybe Stalin, maybe he did a bit much. Maybe we should back up. Oh man, that's kind of funny.
Mao is outraged by these views, and in turn denounces Khrushchev's views as a betrayal of communism. In his eyes, the Soviet Union has gone soft. It is a fatal ideological split. And after 1959, the two leaders will never meet again.
Oh, wow. You know, in some ways, the fracturing of some communist like states and their relationships was really interesting, because I forgot who made the quote, but it's like someone was like, a famous figure was talking about the differences between communism and you know, capitalism, and I forgot who said it, someone famous, but he was like, well, at least we don't need to build walls to keep people in, or something like that. Something like that. I forgot who said it, but you might already know. But point is, like, I always found that kind of funny. It's like, in some ways, you know, that I guess capitalism, especially compared to some other places with communist ideas, you know, had to work less to keep everything together. And I think so, yeah. Especially like Stalin having to kind of rule with a more iron fist and stuff. So we don't need to keep walls to keep people in. We don't need to build walls, I think. Something like that. Those aren't the exact words, but of the same vein. And again, like I said, the prospect of China and Russia, especially at this point, if they were just completely birds of a feather and completely were on the same page, is a terrifying prospect to think about. Just the infinite manpower, like, you know. But yeah, the relationship was always kind of complex, to put it nicely, and yeah, eventually kind of just win, as we saw here. Probably best for the West, though. Probably good for the West, though. Like this, you know.
That year, China faces a revolt against its rule in Tibet. In response, the Chinese army shells Lhasa. The uprising ends after 3 days of bloody street fighting. The Dalai Lama and 80,000 Tibetans flee to India. From now on, Tibet is under direct Chinese rule. In 1962, tension on the Himalayan border between China and India explodes into a month of fighting as China grabs disputed territory. Tellingly, the Soviet Union backs India, not China.
Wow.
A sign of how far their relationship has broken down.
Dang.
The Soviets have already withdrawn all technical support for Chinese weapons programs. But China is no longer so reliant on foreign expertise. 1958, for example, had seen the founding of the University of Science and Technology of China in Peking. And in 1964, at Lop Nor in Xinjiang province, China tests its first atomic bomb.
Wow.
2 years later, it detonates its first thermonuclear device.
Oh, wow.
China has joined the United States, Soviet Union, Britain and France to become the world's 5th nuclear power, adopting a
Yeah, this is how you measure the strength of a superpower nation at this point in history. Are you capable of having a bomb, and then it becomes how many bombs do you have? You know what I mean? It's dang. You know, there's a lot of discourse with the bombs. Some people are like, bombs were a good thing. It keeps us having less wars. I think it's some of the arguments, or at least one of an argument that people make. And others are like, nah, having bombs is probably one of the worst things, because now if we all ever choose to use them, you know, we could like potentially just end the world. But then others have said, well, no, but the fear of using them is what keeps, you know, people in my, like, you get me. I don't know. There's debate around it. I'm not sure where I stand, but I will say its destructive capabilities are incredibly frightening. Especially, like, I'm like wondering, where do we go from here? Like, how much more until, like, what's gonna top the bomb? Like, you know what I mean? Like, bombs have evolved since the 1940s and 50s and 60s, and I'm just like wondering, where do we go? You know, it's gonna be real life Star Wars. We're gonna create like bombs that can wipe out entire, you know, planets. Just one bomb can wipe out a planet, or we're gonna build real life Death Stars in the future. Just every nation has a Death Star. Just we're just shooting. I'm sorry. I'm like kind of joking around, but like it's also kind of terrifying to think that, you know, where does it go? Like, how much further does humanity's ability to create weapons of terror just keep going? You know? And if it's good or not for us in the long run, I guess. I don't know.
First use, nuclear policy.
Oh boy.
There is no longer any question that China stands on its own feet as a major world power.
Yeah, look at how far it's come. From the beginning where China was basically being bullied by every other power, Japan and the West, now it's like just, yeah, we stand on our own, which is another reason I heard why, you know, some people still revere Mao Zedong. It's like, look at what China was before. Like, you know, now it could stand on its own and was strong, during his reign and whatnot. So yeah, like I said, very interesting, but it is kind of cool to see now China no longer kind of being under the influence or just under the direct rule of anyone. Just now they do stand on their own, and they've taken the stage, world stage, as a superpower. To this day, they're still a superpower. So yeah.
But Mao and the Chinese Communist Party still see much work to do. Their next battleground will be within Chinese society itself.
Oh wow, they're gonna show the narrator?
The Epic History team uses heaps of technology to make our videos, from laptops and drives to headphones, microphones, and of course the dreaded cables. And when we're off on our...
Yeah, sorry, I was kind of captivated there for a second. But that's really interesting. It's cool to see the narrator. Holy crap, like, it always just the voice. I'm telling you, the English accent is just the best narrating. Like, you know, you don't often hear in these really big YouTube channels, like, just an American dude talking like me, like, and then Mao Zedong did it. Like, you always hear, like, the English accent, you know what I mean? Especially in, like, animal documentaries, too. It's just, like, it's the perfect accent to narrate things. Like, the English have that over the rest of the world, I think. Dang, I wish I had an English accent. I would love to narrate stuff, history stuff, but, like, my voice just isn't for it, you know? But, I'm sorry. So that was a really interesting video. I'm definitely gonna have to do more research, but I'm interested in knowing what you all think about Mao Zedong. Was he good? Was he bad? Is somewhere in between? Please let me know. I really want to read and see, what people think about everything that happened. And I'm going to end the video right here because I need to get this on YouTube and I have another one to look at. So I'm going to stop the video right here. Bye, everyone.